We're good, Charlie.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon. I'm Charlie Williams. I'm president of the Greater Juneau Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of myself, our executive director, Craig Dahl, and our board of directors, I want to welcome all of you to our weekly webinar and thank you for joining us for today's program. Got a couple announcements before we get to our speaker. I'd like to keep encouraging everyone to wear your mask when you're out in public. This is still the most effective thing we can do as a community to keep this virus under control, and by also continuing to social distance when we're out in public. Wearing your mask tells others that you care. I'd also like to ask each of you to mark your calendars for our annual meeting, which is coming up on October 1st. And our speaker on that day will be Angela Rodell with the Alaska Permanent Fund, Director of the Alaska Permanent Fund. Also, we're a little late this year, but we do now have our nominations open for the Citizen of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Awards. Please go to the Juneau Chamber website and you can download a form and suggest who you would like to be the Citizen of the Year or who is deserving of our annual Lifetime Achievement Award. For today's program, we will have time at the end of Brett's presentation for question and answer. I'd like to remind everyone there's a question and answer tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please use that tab to ask your questions and we'll get to them in the order in which we receive them. And today I am pleased to welcome Brett Huber, who is here to speak about defeating Alaska State Proposition 2. So as a lifelong outdoors enthusiast, Brett came to Alaska 36 years ago. Once here, he's had the privilege to work and live throughout our great state. Over the years, he's been a fishing guide in the Bristol Bay, Iliamna, and South Central Alaska regions, a small business owner in King Salmon and Talkeetna. He ran a statewide nonprofit in Soldotna and was first introduced to state politics in 1994 in the Mat-Su Valley. In addition to working for both the legislature and the state, Brett became a community activist and involved participant in many issues affecting Alaskans. Most recently, he managed the governor's successful statewide election and then joined the executive branch as the governor's director of both policy and communications. 1 month ago, Brett stepped away from that position to focus his attention on protection of our most basic constitutional rights by organizing a statewide campaign to defeat ballot measure 2. So without further ado, Brett, welcome. Not hearing you, Brett. Brett, you're on mute. Brett, you're still on mute.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Thanks a million. And are you seeing me or are you seeing my presentation? Help me through the tech for just a second, Charlie.
We're seeing both your presentation and you.
Okay, awesome. So this, you should have just me here now.
That's correct. Yep, just you there.
Excellent. Again, I'm still getting used to the modern technology and the Zoom meetings. I've been in a ton of them. I don't generally run them from my end, so thank you for bearing with me. Thanks for having me today, Charlie, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and a number of your board members the other evening. So I'm going to attempt now to share my screen again so you can see my slideshow. You're going to see that there's going to be a bar of upcoming slides down the side. Just ignore those till I get to them, would you? So I want to make sure I pick the slides in the right order. So we're going to start out by saying, asking a question. How many of you know what ballot measure 2 is or does? That's the first question. Obviously, it's through this medium, it's difficult to get a response, so we're fine with just knowing that likely some of you do and some of you don't. The next question I'd have for you is how many people have read the 25-page proposal that would enact an entirely new election system in place of the tried and tested fair system that we have? Even those that signed the petition book to put it on the ballot, and many of the people that go to the voting booth, I would bet very few Alaskans will read the 25 pages. It is laborious, it is difficult, it is hard to understand, and it changes virtually all parts of our election system. What do I mean by that? So, start with, I guess I'd like to say this is a bunch of Alaskans who've come together that I'm super happy to be a part of. We've got co-chairs, 30 of them from around the state, a number of them from your area in Southeast and Juneau. Our co-chairs look like Alaskans. They are from different walks of life. They're from different political persuasions. They're different ages. They live in different regions. They look like the state because that's what's at stake, is our state's citizens' elemental right to have their vote count in a fair and transparent process. Ballot measure 2 takes that away. It's being funded over 99% by outside billionaires, and they're trying to change our election system with a failed experiment that hasn't worked in other places. So I'm just going to run down, I'm going to bounce it back and forth a bit between the screen and my notes. Please bear with me. So this initiative cobbles together really 2 failed election experiments from the lower 48. One's called ranked choice voting. That requires voters to assign a score to every candidate in the ballot or risk having their ballot thrown out. What's that mean? That means if you have 4 people to pick and you're supposed to pick your first, second, third, and fourth choice, even though maybe 3 of the people in the race are absolutely opposed to the position that you care the most about, you're expected to rank them or vote for them. What happens if you don't? What happens if you just cast a ballot for the person you concur with that carries your most important issue? If that person gets the most votes and it's over 50%, your vote counts and they win. If they get the most votes and it's under 50%, and then they go to round 2, you've not selected any of the other contestants, any of the other candidates, your vote no longer counts. It becomes what they call an exhausted ballot, and it goes in the garbage. So you may have picked the candidate that got the most votes in round 1, but you're out of the rest of the rounds of voting. That's just a little bit of a snapshot. The other piece that it adds is a California-style jungle primary. So there's one state that has ranked choice voting. That's Maine. It's been a horror story. There are two states that use the ranked choice voting. I'm sorry, the jungle primary, and that is California and Washington state. Hasn't proven to be real successful there. What a jungle primary is you get rid of all the party affiliations. Everybody that wants to jump in the race jumps in the race. The top 4 vote getters go forward to the general election, even if all 4 of them are Republicans, all 4 of them are Democrats, however it may work. It's just the top 4 vote getters. So in California, where they use a jungle primary, there are 17 congressional districts that are being decided among Democrat 1 or Democrat 2, or Republican 1 and Republican 2. There's no room for minority representation. There's no room for great debates. There's no room for grand discussions that voters ought to hear. It just takes the top 4, moves them forward, and then you rank them from there, or maybe not have your vote count. So the thing I want to warn you about is this is backed by these billionaires, and they're going to spend a ton of money telling you part of the story about this ballot measure, right? Just part of the story. They're going to tell you that it eliminates dark money, when in fact, it eliminates some dark money, and only if it's held as constitutional, which there's substantial questions about. It doesn't affect their dark money. They're running a $3 million dark money campaign to tell Alaskans that we need to get rid of dark money. I'd also like people to understand that should their ballot measure pass, it won't affect the way they're doing business in this race. So if a few billionaires want to throw several $1 million at Alaska and find a couple people that'll take their money and run a campaign for them, they'll be able to do the same thing in 2 years because they've exempted ballot measures or themselves from this entire process. A little bit of hypocrisy, a little bit disingenuous, but something I think that's important that Alaskan voters should know, right? So we're fixing, ballot measure 2 proposes to fix something that's really not broken. It proposes to fix it with an experiment that's failed in other areas, and it proposes Alaskans to be fooled by their slick ads and not do their homework. So thanks for having me here today. Our system's been in place for about 250 years, right? It's normal, typical, easily understood. Their radical substitute's rare, it's unusual, it's complicated, and it's jam-packed with problems. And we're gonna go through just a few of them now, if you don't mind. So let me see if I can manage to get my screen back up and move to the next slide. So one of the problems with a 25-page long, 74-section ballot measure is it doesn't go through a review process. Nobody gets together and puts their best minds and says, well, does this work with this section? How does this affect our Constitution? Is this even legal? The kind of things that you're used to seeing in Juneau as it goes through the legislative process, right? Somebody puts a bill in. The bill then becomes the possession of the body of the legislature. Everybody gets to weigh in, public testimony happens, and a product comes out that ideally everybody can live with or agree on. This system was completely different. It's 25 pages, written somewhere by someone, and then it pops up on our ballot and we're gonna be a yes or no. So the piece that I have up there right now shows clear language in our Constitution that says the governor wins by plurality. It's the greatest number of votes. So right off the bat in their measure, it affects the governor and lieutenant governor, but that's going to be found unconstitutional. Same kind of thing that happened in Maine. They passed it there 6 years ago. They've had nothing but litigation, and they're trying to remove it from the way they do elections in Maine. So there's a clear unconstitutional violation. That just points out one of what I think is probably 30 mistakes or problems or terms of art that don't line up in this proposed legislation. If it's passed by ballot initiative, the legislature can't even go in and fix the problems for 2 years. This thing's big, it's complex, and it's fraught with difficult problems. Oh, let's go to, so we talked a little bit about ballot exhaustion and voter error, right? So I'm going to share with you just a couple things. They're going to say you only need to vote for one candidate. That's true, as long as you don't mind if your candidate doesn't win and get 50% of the vote the first time around, you don't count anymore. So it's true, but it's only partially true. It'll be like you never voted if you don't pick the right one or the one that ends up winning this kind of compiled faux majority that they're speaking about. So how big a problem's ballot exhaustion where your vote gets tossed out? In a peer-reviewed longitudinal study from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and Ohio State University found that ranked choice ballot exhaustion ranges from 10 to 27%. So in San Francisco, despite using ranked choice voting since 2004, 27% of voters cast no vote in the 2011 mayoral election because they were left out of the shuffle. That means that we could be thinking about adopting a system in Alaska where up to 3 out of 10 Alaskans' votes wouldn't count in the outcome. To me, one person, one vote's pretty basic, and that's just not acceptable. Let's take a look at what ballots look like under this ranked choice system. Sorry. So this is a San Francisco election ballot. You see the bubble charts, you see the numerous names. There's no party affiliation. Party affiliation would be removed from the ballot unless a candidate petitioned to have a party affiliation put in place. It's complex. It's a new system. It would be like everybody knows how to drive, everybody knows how to vote. So they say, well, it should be simple. People should be able to learn it. Well, of course. But if I get out and go into my truck today and all of a sudden I'm in England and my steering wheel's on the other side and I have to drive on the other side of the road, probably not going to make arriving at my destination any easier. This kind of complication to something that's tried, true, simple, and fair is the same kind of paradigm shift. It's just going to confuse people. It's just going to make for poor outcomes. So the other thing that's really a problem about ballot exhaustion generally and about this ranked choice voting is it tends to disenfranchise voters. Can you imagine if you went and voted for who you thought was the winner that had the most votes? Now they're not the winner and your vote didn't count. How likely are you to go back? Right? We need more voter turnout in Alaska, not less. The other side says this will increase voter turnout. Every place it's been adopted, it's proven to do exactly the opposite. It decreases voter turnout, it disenfranchises voters, and it favors white, more affluent voters instead of minorities or those that are less advantaged. And that is not because either one of those people are smarter than the other, but a single mom working 2 jobs probably doesn't have the luxury to spend as much time studying political campaigns, candidates, researching all of the votes, and selecting 4 candidates in the right order for the ballot, right? It's a lot just to get to the polls. As we all know, life is busy. Let's not make it harder. Okay, so now we're going to get to the point we're going to talk a little bit about why this is coming to Alaska. And oh, by the way, they talk about this being, I think I messed up. Let me get back to screen share. Okay, so they talk about this being an Alaskan solution, right? So it's not an Alaskan solution. It's this is a group of people that want to change the way voting's done in our nation. They have said so in presentations. Commonwealth North several weeks ago, one of the leaders of this on the national level said, Alaska is a swing state because it's a cheap date. You're a long ways away from people. We can buy a media market for millions instead of hundreds of millions like we would in a big state. And if we tip over a couple of these little states, we can take it to the bigger states, right? So what I heard is Alaskans should be okay with being guinea pigs because we're one of the building blocks to where they would like to accomplish getting. And then what I've heard from the proponents is, no, this is an Alaskan measure and we've crafted ourselves. So the language that you see on your screen now is language that appears in the issue that passed in Maine, in the issue they're proposing for us, in their national model legislation, in the legislation they're trying to pass in Massachusetts that they were going to try to pass in North Dakota till their Supreme Court just pulled it from the ballot. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is this isn't an Alaska solution. This is an outside solution foisted on Alaskans because we don't cost a lot of money to reach and they're counting on us not paying attention beyond just the slick ad campaign that they can afford. So here's the source, Fair Vote USA. So you can see the check marks, right? You can see the arrows. Don't bother reading the fine print. Do it on your own time. I'm happy to provide this PowerPoint or any of the materials to anybody that wants to look at it. Happy to cite all of the sources we use. We just want to make sure that Alaskans have the information they need to make such an important decision at the ballot box. So this isn't homegrown. This is grown from outside and it's supported by people that do not have our best interest at heart. So who's supporting it? Here's a quick list of their top contributors. They've raised or expended nearly $3 million. They have raised 99.6% of that money from outside of Alaskans, and most of that money from these 3 people. Catherine Murdoch. She's a billionaire from New York, climate change activist, and a trustee for the Environmental Defense Fund. The president of her organization raked in $666,000 in compensation in 2018. Ms. Murdoch, if you want to spend a bunch of money in Alaska, we have a lot of nonprofits and a lot of needs and a lot of things we'd love to do with you, but not take over our election system. Mark Merrill, he's a billionaire California video game developer. He's the video game developer whose workplace was called toxic and ground zero for Me Too accusations. Google it, Mark Merrill. John Arnold, there's another one of the billionaires that's helping try to change our elections. So John got the largest employee bonus ever when he left Enron right before the company crushed and imploded, right? So these are the guys that are funding this thing from outside. This isn't homegrown. When you watch those ads, remember who's speaking to you, because they got a bunch of them coming, right? And they're doing the same thing across the country. So the real issue, I guess, I want to show you one more slide, and then we'll get down to just closing comments so we have some time for questions. And thank you all for listening to me ramble on. So a ranked choice election, here's the worst that can happen, right? Round one, say you've picked candidate Linda. Candidate Linda got 32% of the vote. So you picked a winning candidate, unless you didn't vote for second, third, or fourth, because Linda's 32% is not enough to qualify as a winner. So we're now qualifying winners and we're building winners for ourselves. So you eliminate Greg from round one, that 14% of the vote of those that voted for a second place are reallocated. Now you have Linda still in the lead with 38 to John's 32%. Bob's down to 30. Now you take Bob, who still has 30%, same thing he has as in the first round, so he was the second place finisher, and you've eliminated him. You redistribute his votes, and John, the guy that was in third place after the first round, comes up with 56% of the votes and becomes a winner. It's a race to the middle. It's a race to mediocrity. It's a race to squelching opposing viewpoints and constructive dialogue on the issues facing Alaska. It's just a race in the wrong direction. But you don't have to just take my word for it. Let's see what Governor Gavin Newsom of California said. He said, as he vetoed the ranked choice voting legislation that came through their Senate, ranked choice is an experiment that has been tried in several charter cities in California where it's been implemented. I'm concerned that it has often led to voter confusion and that the promise that ranked choice voting leads to greater democracy is not necessarily fulfilled. That is Governor Gavin Newsom of California, who thinks this radical idea isn't right for them. I'm guessing that a lot of people, after they have a chance to hear the facts and read the research, are going to think that this kind of radical choice isn't the next thing that we need to do either. Let me get back to, did I share that screen of Gavin? Or did I mess that up? Charlie?
No, we did not see that screen.
Okay, well, let's try that again, okay? Because I think it's important. This isn't things that Brett's saying. This isn't things that 30 coaches are saying. This is a lot of research and diligence that went into this issue. Every one of our quotes will be cited. Every one of our bits of information will be cited. Expect that from me. Hold my feet to the fire. Do that for the other campaign as well. So I'm just going to run down a couple things. So in my mind, this ballot issue is not fair, it's not democratic, and it's not needed, right? The real giveaway is that the problems that the other side claim to be fixing don't exist in Alaska. We don't have a partisan legislature. We might be the only state in the union with a multi-party caucus led by an independent House Speaker. One of the main proponents and drafters of this piece of work for Alaska was Mr. Scott Kendall. Scott's a nice enough man. I don't have any issues with him personally. But he worked for an independent governor for 2 years. So clearly we can get independents on the ballot. This state elected the first statewide libertarian candidate in the nation when they elected Dick Randolph 30 years ago, right? Smaller parties can get direct to the ballot. You can go direct to the general. Just go get 50 to 100 signatures, 200 in some districts, and $35, and you're on the general election ballot. So the idea that this provides more choice and more voice is just false narrative. Sounds great on their commercial, just false narrative. There are no closed primaries in Alaska. Let's dispel that myth too, because they're calling our primaries closed. So the Democratic primary is wide open in Alaska. That means any voter can select their primary ballot and help them determine their candidate for the general election. The Republican ballot's called a classic open. That means anybody that's not affiliated with a different party, so all the undeclareds, all the independents, all the unaffiliateds, and all the Republicans can vote on that ballot to help the Republicans pick their choice to go forward. So our party systems, you know, although not always functional, isn't broken. We aren't blocking people from the ballot that ought to have a chance. We are actually, for a state, the easiest one in the nation to get to a general election ballot. $35, 100 signatures, you're on the general election ballot. Do we need sometimes to elect better candidates? Sure. Do my candidates always win? No. Do yours always win? No. But we have a fair process that we can see, believe, and is transparent. Why in the world are we fixing something that's not broken? I'm not the only people that feel this way. All parties opposed to ranked choice voting. Governor Parnell and Senator Mark Begich have called ranked choice voting political trickery. Take a read of their Wall Street Journal op-ed. Former Lieutenant Governor Meade Treadwell noted that it would totally confuse the process. This is a gentleman who, when he served office, his most important thing was to keep track of elections, and is telling us that this thing just doesn't work. The Kansas ACLU said ranked choice voting exacerbates economic and racial disparities in voting. With a melting pot like we have in Alaska, why in the world are we going to try to make one voice stronger than the other? Makes no sense to me. The Memphis NAACP supported repeal of ranked choice voting, said it wasn't in the interest of their voters. So there's a bunch of reasons not to like this thing. I'm going to stop now. As you can see, I'm passionate about this issue because it affects our basic constitutional provisions of free speech, free association, and one person, one vote. I don't think it's good for Alaska. I hope you do your homework, and I think you can make up your own mind. Just do your homework, please. Again, thank you, Charlie. I hope I didn't go too long. I'm happy to answer questions if you want to pose them.
Great, Brett. Oh, thank you. And I see you've got on your screen there, defendalaskaelections.com, and I've been to your site, and I have to say it's very open and very transparent, and I hope everyone who's listening to this, watching this webinar today, will take the time to go become informed. So there are some questions, and I'll start off with first one, who's from an anonymous attendee. You said, Brett,
Yes,
that if this passes, the problems can't be fixed for 2 years. And the question is, why is this initiative exempt from the legislature's right to amend initiatives right away, like it would normally be?
So actually, the legislature doesn't have a right to amend initiatives right away. If initiative passes at the voters, there's actually a bar from the legislature taking that issue up for 2 years. After 2 years runs, then they can start working on issues. But the difference between a piece of legislation that's passed, that's open to referendum by the voters and taken away, is if it's an initiative, it comes through, it's got 2 years to stand before it can be amended.
Great, thank you. Next question comes from Denny, and he says that he asks, what happens if I vote for the same person for first, second, and third choices?
That's a great question, Denny. Not surprised it came from you. So if you pick 1, 2, and 3, although there's going to be 4 in the race, right? So are you picking all 4 or just 3? Let's assume you pick the same person for all 4 choices. If your person arrives in first place, but then the vote needs to be reshuffled, your reshuffle just stays as the first place vote. It doesn't add up to a second place vote. You have to rank the choices. All 4, you're going to get 1 choice, then you're an exhausted ballot. Your ballot's tired, Danny. It's going to go in the garbage.
Okay. Well, this next one is really not actually on topic, and I'll let you choose whether you want to answer it or not, Brett.
Okay.
It says, if outside money from billionaires on one side of an issue means the opposite side is right, will you be voting yes on one?
So will I be voting yes on one if outside billionaires? So I'm seeing the outside billionaire groups, some of the nonprofits, some of the the very woke groups actually supporting the yes on Prop 1. So I think there's money outside money from both sides in that election. I'm going to make my decision on that based on what I think is best for Alaska's future, my kids' economic well-being, my grandkids having an opportunity for a job. So that's how I'm going to base my vote on that one. But in that race, you got billions from both sides. So there is no pure money. You just have to decide where you want to land economically. Our race, pretty clear distinction. Is that close to answering it, Charlie?
That's a good answer. And
well, I don't know if it was good,
yeah.
but that's as close as I'm going to get.
Well, it's a good answer in the respect that, you know, you have to consider each proposition for the worth of the proposition. And
Absolutely.
I also feel that you know, you do need to look at outside money, or, you know, money that's, you know, from the state, from the respect that if it's all outside money on an issue versus in-state money, then, you know, that might cast just a little bit different light on the issue.
Right. Well, especially when the outside money is coming from people that have no direct investment in Alaska, other than to change this system as part of what they like to do on the national level, and we just get run over in the meantime, right? It's just been a mess.
Right.
Maine. We can choose to be the second mess. I'd suggest we don't.
And much of the outside money for Prop 1, you know, much of that money is invested in Alaska. So is it outside money? Is it inside, you know, in-state? Yeah, exactly.
So they've got that argument to make. I know where I fall on it. In our case, it's really a stark difference, just a stark difference.
Okay. All right. So who are the in-state leaders for ballot measure 2? Do you have
the proponents, or those that have joined with me on our fight against it? Those that want to throw our election law away and change it with this new system? Is that what you're asking?
So I think they're asking, are there proponents that are in state for ballot measure 2?
So there's a couple of them, right? I think they initially filed with 3 people, which is what it takes to file a petition. I think their current APOC filing's got 5 people that are directly involved in the campaign, right? It's like Bonnie Jack, who's, you know, was a longtime Republican and has usually been involved in a lot of these kind of middle of the road issues. Scott Kendall, former chief of staff, has been their chief spokesperson thus far. He's the one that I've debated against or with in different venues. Right. Other than that small group, you start looking at their APOC report. It's not just the money going in. All the money they're spending is for consulting firms and hit firms and ad agencies outside Washington, D.C., spread across the country. So, you know, it's a great question, Charlie. There are people out there that are proponents for this. You'll get a chance to hear them at the Lieutenant Governor's meeting next week, where they will be there and we will be there. But as far as finding like this group of Alaskans, or this segment of Alaska, or this piece of the political landscape, or that's proposing this or supporting it, I just haven't found them. I mean, every Alaskan I'm talking to, as soon as they look at this issue, doesn't like it. So I don't think they have a lot of Alaska base, but they've got a lot of outside dollars. They've got $1 million of TV, just television, running between now and the end of the election. So you're going to hear a lot from them. You're just not going to see a lot of them.
Right. And so you just mentioned you have debated this issue with, say, Scott Kendall or someone else so far?
I did, and I'll be doing many more of them. Every place I have an opportunity to speak, and thank you again for today, every debate opportunity I have. So you're going to see them from the university, you're going to see them from Rotary clubs, you're going to see them from you know, political organizations around the state. I'm happy to debate this issue anywhere, anytime.
And have any of those debates been recorded and put up on your website or anybody else's website?
So they're coming to our website soon. There's actually a link, I think, on our Facebook page to some radio presentations we've done and debates. The Alaska Alliance, the Oilfield Support Industry Alliance, was one of the debates. I believe if you contact them, they'd be happy to share those links. So that page is coming to my website, but we're building this stuff at my kitchen counter with Alaskans that are committed along with me, right? So we're keeping up as fast as we can. We started a year late and $3 million behind, but with support of good people like you and Alaskans taking a real look at this measure, you know, I think David can beat Goliath. I really do.
Great. So who are the primary sponsors of the Defend Alaska Elections campaign, and how much have you raised?
So money raised so far, we have a 10-day report that's due this evening, so I'm not going to give anybody a sneak preview on that. At our last 10-day report, we'd raised $3,400. My top three donors were John Sturgeon, my campaign chairman, former Senator Mark Begich, and former Governor Sean Parnell. Those were my three top donors, right? This next 10-day report, the number is going to be a little bit bigger. I think the other side's going to see we're going to get in the fight. Fundraising is going okay. Ours is almost entirely Alaskan at this point. Will I accept some money from other places? As long as they're willing to support our Alaskan message, quite possibly. Am I going to take money that means I carry their water? No. So, but again, the other side's watching. The 10-day report will file tonight, and then everybody can see how much money we've raised and where it's come from. Can I say one other thing really quickly about the dark money issue? Because I think it's important,
Yeah.
Charles. So the only reason dark money is in this ballot, three different pieces that would usually be in three different ballots, and I get it. The Supreme Court said you could run them all together under the single subject of elections. They're dealing with dark money because that's the winning issue. All their campaign's going to be talking about eliminate dark money. Problem is it doesn't, and they're using dark money to fool you. So it's really, that's their loss leader, right? That's their political message. That's their silver bullet, they believe. And I'm just going to raise money from every individual Alaskan I can, whether it's a $5, $10, $20 contribution or a $50,000 contribution. And the numbers are going to stack up like they stack up. Just don't believe the dark money. Ask the questions, please.
So our next question would like you to bring the 3-panel example slide with Linda on it and take us through it again slowly.
Okay, so did this even show the last time I tried to do this?
It's not seeing it now.
Okay, stand by. How about now?
There it is.
Okay, so let's say the two top vote getters in this race, or let's say the top vote getter, no, the two top vote getters in this race are from the same party or have exactly the same viewpoints, are long-term assembly members that people know. So Linda and Bob, those are people that everybody knows. And then we have John and Greg. So Linda and Bob get 62% of the vote between them. But there's no winner because under ranked choice voting, you would have to reach at least 50%. Well, as Alaskans know, we often have more than two people in our elections. We don't get to 50%. Most votes wins and every vote counts. Ask Bryce Edgman, he was decided by a coin flip. Ask Bart LeBon, he was decided by a vote. Okay, so that's round one. Linda at 32, Bob at 30%, John at 24, Greg, poor Greg, only 14. So Greg gets thrown out. They grab Greg's ballots and they see if he has a second place choice. Any ballot that does is counted. Any ballot that doesn't gets thrown in the garbage. So Greg's people just left the election, even though we're now doing this algorithm runoff. So we get to round two. Once those Greg's votes are redistributed, now Linda has 38% of the vote, and John has eclipsed Bob with 32%, because John didn't offend anybody, right? He just didn't really say anything, didn't take a position. He went out and walked his dog. He went to the grocery store. He called people and said nice things on the phone. Bob's a nice guy. So Linda now has 38%. She was the winner. She's still the winner in round two. Now what happens is Bob, the nice guy, his votes get redistributed and they go to John more than Linda. So now John has 56%. So it's met this fake majority hurdle that ranked choice voting needs. And then after meeting that hurdle, you see Linda, who was in first place after round 1 and 2, is now a loser. John, who was in third place after round 1, second place after round 2, is now suddenly the winner of this election.
Wow, that's a bad deal for for that poor guy. So
I used to coach kids soccer, Charlie. And when I coached kids soccer when my kids were young, right, for the 5-year-old league, we did participation ribbons. But once the kids got up to 10 or 12, they were playing for real trophies. First, second, and third mattered to them. I don't know why we'd run an election based on participation ribbons. I mean, let's let the winner win.
yes. So Measure 2 backers say that it eliminates last place candidates, not second place candidates. What exactly is the language that says you're right and they're wrong? And I wonder if it's not part of that last discussion of how that works.
Right, so the way it eliminated the first place candidate in the slide that I still have up before you, the way it eliminated that candidate was because first place didn't carry to third round, carried to second round. Sure, it eliminated Greg, but the people that chose to pick other folks on Greg's ballot got to be a part of the reapportionment. Those that didn't, their ballot went in the garbage because it was tired. right? So, I mean, it's the slide that I have is how it works. The fact that it's so difficult to wrap our minds around and understand exactly what the outcomes may be should be enough to have people running for the hills as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if we can't in an hour figure out how this works, we're going to have Alaskan voters at the booth that have never read this, never sat through a presentation like this before, and are going to just judge by how we touch them with the ads. So the other side's talking about dark money. We're going to be talking about the real issue. And I'm hoping Alaskans tune in because it's going to be a busy and loud election season. But this particular ballot measure is a sleeper. And in my mind, it is a killer for us.
Okay, so Senator Jesse Keel is telling us that the legislature, it's true, cannot repeal for 2 years, but they can amend. The legislature did that with the cruise ship initiative, among others.
So they can amend, Senator Keel, and I would never argue with you. You serve, and I'm just a guy trying to run a campaign. But I believe there's a bar from amending for the first 2 years. So the cruise ship initiative was amended. It was amended twice, but it wasn't amended until that period ran. I could be wrong. You could be right, Jesse. I certainly respect your office and the fact that you work hard at what you do.
So the next question, can you talk about the difference in standards for contributors? You mentioned earlier in your comments, I think we're talking about contributors. He's probably speaking mostly to dark money.
So I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll make this differentiation. If you're a billionaire that can afford to stand up a group and make that group called whatever you want, right? Elect us. And that group is solely contributed to by you, the billionaire, then that group becomes dark money and it can continue today to play in ballot measures just like they're doing now. The difference that they're recommending really would affect politically active nonprofits like chambers of commerce, right? That example is actually cited by Mr. Kendall. Chambers of commerce have too much influence, right? So it's really about picking whose dark money is okay and whose isn't. I mean, here's how if I could cure dark money, I'd just say, take the money from where it comes and report every bit of it. And report it not just on your APOC reports, but let's make candidates run an ad that shows where their money came from and why. Let's do something that actually has value, just doesn't make it more difficult for a group like yours to participate. We don't need to quiet voices, we just need to disclose. So, you know, what I'd suggest is if Senator Keel would be a great one for you, I think Senator Begich, any of them, just run a bill next year to eliminate dark money and do it in a way that actually solves the problem. I'll get up and speak in favor of your bill. This just trying to tuck that into this mess just is the wrong way, in my opinion.
Okay, well, hopefully that answered Denny's question. So I think this next question, actually, you've already addressed it. It's back to the repealed by the legislature after 2 years, but it can be amended already. So you've already answered that.
As best I can, but Jesse could be right. Senator Keel could be right. I just don't remember it that way. I worked in the building for a long time too, but that doesn't mean that I'm right about this one.
So you said that this is an unconstitutional because of how the governor and lieutenant governor are elected. Receiving the greatest number of votes shall be governor as part of the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Would this initiative then replace that? And I think you were saying that it couldn't because it's in conflict with the Constitution.
Yeah, so my understanding, and you have people in the room that can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is specific language on point in the Constitution trumps statute, trumps regulation. So our constitutional language for plurality for governor is clear. This ballot issue wouldn't affect a governor's race. That's just one issue that would be struck down if this thing would be passed. There's probably 15 others. I mean, this never had the benefit of legislative review. It didn't go through Senator Keel's committee. Smart people didn't get to ask questions about it. We didn't get to have these discussions. That's just one problem I'd point out, but there's numerous problems. If you look to Maine, 4 years of endless litigation, and the only races now that you can affect in Maine with ranked choice voting are federal races, because between the litigation and the legislature, they realize that they're the only state that's adopted it, that this is not a good idea and they're trying to get rid of it. So.
Okay, well, Brett, I want to thank you for coming today and presenting these important issues on defending against Proposition 2. And with that, wrap up our webinar today by reminding our audience that the nominations are open for Citizen of the Year and Lifetime Achievement Awards. Please visit the Juneau Chamber website to download a form. Remember that we have our October 1st annual meeting of the Chamber during that webinar, that Zoom. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And please join us again next week. Have a great day. Be safe. Please wear your masks. We are adjourned.
Thank you so much, Craig.